Om Amriteshwarye Namaha. Om Amriteshwarye Namaha. Om Amriteshwarye Namaha. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Puranamunina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamritavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Amvattvamanusantatami Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshinim Namostu te Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pullaravinda Yatapatra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajvalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraika Panaye Jnana Mudraya Krishnaya Gitamrita Duhe Namaha Sarvopanishado Gavo Dogdha Gopala Nandanaha Partho Vatsya Sudhir Bhokta Dugdham Gitamritam Mahata Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanura Mardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Om Amriteshwarye Namaha. Thank you all for joining us again. We are now nearing the end of the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And last week we discussed that from verse 25 to the end of this chapter, Krishna is summarizing the teaching of this chapter. And we've already covered some of those verses. He first talked about some sadhanas and the fruit of this knowledge, which is the knowledge of differentiating the world of matter from consciousness. We hear that everything is consciousness, or everybody, in essence, we're all consciousness. But in the Gita, he is very clearly delineating the consciousness as the substratum of this whole creation, and then he has a different term to refer to the inert matter of the universe. So here in this chapter, the consciousness is Purusha, and the inert matter is called Prakriti. He uses different words to refer to the same things throughout the Gita. So here in this chapter, it's Purusha and Prakriti. So we'll hear some other terms later on, and I'll explain those. And then he explains the benefit of having that knowledge, to being able to tell the difference between consciousness and the inert matter of the world. And the benefit is that we will go beyond death. So one of my favorite scriptures that is not from Sanatana Dharma directly is Dhammapada, which is an early Buddhist text. And the words of Lord Buddha in that text, I find they sound very much like Amma. So in that Dhammapada, Lord Buddha says, "Consider the world a bubble, a mirage. See the world as it is, and death shall overlook you." Very much what Krishna is saying in this chapter. See things properly through knowledge, and you can transcend death. We also, last time, we also heard about 5 stages of sadhana that a seeker goes through. All of us have to go through these. The first step was karma yoga, which is focused mostly on purifying ourselves internally. And then the next phase or stage was upasana, which is a broader version of bhakti yoga. It includes all kinds of sadhanas that use God in God's form, like a form or a name. So not the unmanifest absolute, but any kind of deity that has a form and a name. All of this falls under the category of upasana. And the purpose of that is to get one-pointedness of mind, chitta ekagrata, or we can say chitta nischalata, which is a steady mind. The third stage is shravana, which means listening to Guru Upadesha, the teachings of the Guru, which can be direct or through the scriptures, the Vedantic scriptures. And the fourth stage was manana, which is reflection on our understanding and seeing have we understood it properly. And we need to remove all of our confusion and in that phase so that we can really meditate on it and absorb it, which is the fifth stage, called nididhyasana. So in that phase, we are already clear on the meaning of all these teachings. Like everything Amma says, we have it very clear. There's no confusion left in our mind, but now we have to assimilate it. We have to make it our own. It's not enough to just have it there in Awakened Children or on your hard drive of your laptop. It has to be installed here, just like a deity in a temple. And then it never goes away. But in order for that to happen, we have to remove all of the vasanas and mental qualities we have that go contrary to those teachings. We may be clear about the teachings, but there may still be blockages in our mind and in our intellect, convictions, and so on. So these are the five phases or stages that we talked about. And which sadhana a person requires at any given time depends on their preparedness from last birth or past lives or even this life. And from Amma's way, we can understand that during this process of sadhana, we don't completely discard the previous sadhana for the next sadhana. If you look at Amma, she's doing all these sadhanas. She never stops, even though she's God realized. So just like we, here around Amma, we do seva, we sing bhajans, we do pujas and everything, even though we're studying the Gita. So it's not like you finish karma yoga and done, never have to do that again. Bhakti yoga, now I'm done, never have to do that again. It is definitely from Amma's example, we can see that that's not the case. Some people present it like that, but around Amma, that's not the case. And it's not just because we disciples and devotees are incapable. It's because she feels that's the better way to do it. We know that from our experience with her. So we still do seva, we still do bhajans, we still do pujas. And in chapter 6 of the Gita, Krishna said that whatever preparation we did in the previous life, in case we don't get realized in this lifetime, we pick up where we left off in the last life. So it's not an excuse for being lazy, but also we don't have to start all over again from scratch. That's the nice thing. So it's a process that spans many lifetimes. And now in the last 7 verses, Krishna will continue to, the next seven verses, Krishna will continue to explain the benefit of this knowledge, and he will explain how that knowledge changes our world vision or our life perspective. And this is all coming from the spiritual wisdom that he is presenting here. So that is the knowledge that we need to imbibe in order to achieve these changes he's going to explain. So let us chant verse 27 of the 13th chapter. You can follow after me. Yavat samjayate kinjit sattvam stavara jangamam kshetra kshetrajna samyogat tadvidhi bharatarshava. Sometimes I take some liberties. If this is your first time, sometimes I take some liberties in translating, or not translating really. It's just presenting these verses to make it a little easier for us to read. And here I have only one change to this verse, which I'll indicate as we read it. Arjuna, whatever being is born, animate or inanimate, know it to be from the union, and I'm going to add in parentheses, yoga, or samyoga, of kshetra and kshetrajna. Kshetra, remember, is the field, which means the entire world, or in a micro concept, it is our body, our own body. And kshetrajna can be either the total knower of this field, the one who knows the entire universe, or we can say the one who knows this body. Not the one who identifies with it, the one who witnesses it separately. So that's the kshetrajna. So in his commentary for this verse, Shankaracharya plays the devil's advocate against himself. So typically when we play the devil's advocate, we do it against somebody else to sort of test whether they really understand what they're talking about. But Krishna, Shankaracharya does this very frequently. This is something that he really likes to do, because instead of sweeping contrary opinions under the carpet, he himself boldly brings up all possible objections and proceeds to reply to those objections preemptively. Because what we know, or what we are taught, is that around Shankaracharya's time, there was a lot of confusion about what is the right way to approach the Vedas. And so he had so many objections to his Vedantic presentation that he had to constantly justify what he was saying. So now Shankaracharya is accepted as the all-time authority, but at his time it was not like that. That's why he took birth, was to settle the score and clarify what the Vedas are really teaching, especially through the Upanishads. For that, we owe him a great debt of gratitude. And we have the living Shankaracharya today, who is Amma, presenting things in a totally different time period, in a way that will appeal and reach all cultures, all people around the world. So the objection that Shankaracharya poses here is that one may have, it's one that may have appeared in our minds also when we heard this translation of this verse, because he talks about the union of kshetra and kshetrajna, the union of the inert matter world with consciousness. Now before, that was a no-no, that was never supposed to happen, because they're completely distinct. That's the concept. And remember that union here, it doesn't mean like, you put a puzzle together or something like that. What it means is actually it's an association of some sort. Now, what kind of association is the key point? If it's like you and me shaking hands or something like that, that is apparently, according to Lord Krishna, that never happens. There's no actual association between Prakriti and Purusha, between the kshetra and the kshetrajna. So what does he mean by this? It seems like he's kind of contradicting his own theory, and that was what the objection is. How can you say that there is a relation between the two, because they're polar opposites? How can it be? So Shankaracharya's response to his own question is that the so-called union or association is not an actuality, but rather, and I quote, in the form of superimposition of each on the other. This phrase requires a lot of explanation. We're going to take some time to address it now, but we're going to have to repeat this over and over again. It's very, very subtle, but a little hard to understand. So he says, it's not an actual association, but it is a seeming association in the form of superimposition of one on the other. So that means the qualities of each have been erroneously projected on the other. We're going to talk about what that actually means. And Shankaracharya says that this is a consequence of a lack of discernment between the real natures of the kshetra, maya, this world, and the kshetrajna, consciousness, which illuminates this world. We don't understand the real nature of consciousness, and we don't understand the real nature of the world. So we just have these fuzzy understandings, and we just lump them together, and that's what gets us in trouble. This is the shorthand version of it. So during Amma's live stream today, we heard a perfect example of this phenomenon. If you weren't watching, I'll have to explain a little bit more. There's a brahmachari named Mokshamrita, wearing yellow, and he was relating an experience he had at Amma's hospital in Cochin, which is Ames Hospital. He went there for some, surgery he had to have on his nose. Who knows what it was? No pun intended. Excuse me. And he was, so he after his surgery, he was recuperating there, and then in those days he was wearing white. And it was nighttime, and he was I can't remember the details. He was looking for something or trying to find somebody, and he was walking down the hallway. But it just so happened that the doctor, after you have nose surgery, there's a lot of blood can run from your nose due to the gravity. So they always put this gauze in your nose, in your nostrils, so that the blood doesn't come out. It's like when you have a bloody nose. So it's nighttime, and he's looking around for somebody, and he's walking down the hallway, and the security guard sees him, screams, and runs out of the building. And he's like, what happened? And he never understood why the security guard was screaming. And what happened was later when he went back to Amritapuri and joined Amma, Amma told him, he never told Amma, but Amma told him why the security guard ran away. And he was so eager to know. And Amma said, well, you were just a regular person, of course, who just happened to be wearing white, and you happened to have gauze protruding from your nostrils. But the security guard got a huge shock due to the unrelated fact that it was late night, and you just happened to be walking in the proximity of the morgue. And the dead bodies are laid there with white clothes, and they put gauze up their nostrils, right? And so here he is walking by the mortuary, by the morgue with this. You can imagine how frightened the security guard got. So the security guard. So this is the key thing. Now we're getting back to the Gita, okay? The security guard superimposed the image of a dead person on this brahmachari walking. He wasn't wearing yellow then, right? He was wearing white. So he's walking down the highway, walking down the hallway. And so he erroneously saw this guy as a zombie, basically. That's what it was. And so dead bodies are not supposed to move. But here, a seemingly dead body was moving. And they're not supposed to do that. So that freaked him out completely. So now you tell me, in reality, was there any so-called union of a dead body and activity? No, definitely not. It was a misperception due to the security guard's lack of knowledge, or we could put it in Vedantic terms, ajnana or ignorance. So ajnana means lack of knowledge, or we just can call it ignorance in English. There was no zombie. There was only Mokshamrita. There was only one of Amma's disciples there. So this kind of mistaken perception or superimposition, we could say, is the equivalent of wrongly superimposing the notion of inert matter, like Maya or Kshetra, on the Atma, on consciousness, and assuming that the self can die or has died. This is what happens when people at a funeral, they see the body or something, and they say, "Oh, Fred is gone, and he died." We say Fred died, right? And then we look at the body and say, "This is Fred's body." So somewhere inside of us, we know that that's not Fred. then what is it? It's the kshetra. It's the field that we were living in for some time. The consciousness was in that for some time. Now the consciousness is free from that. So we can project that inert body on the consciousness if we misperceive. And that's what we all do most of the time, especially at funerals. The opposite phenomenon also happens. Since we only can see, this concrete world with our eyes and perceive, all of our five senses can only perceive the inert world of Maya. So because we cannot see the consciousness, we wrongly superimpose the sentience that belongs to consciousness on the inert body. We think that the body is conscious, but it's not. It's only a reflection of consciousness through the subtle body. And then what we think is, sentience is part of Maya. Like we talked about before, the scientists might think if they can dissect the brain accurately enough, they can find the source of consciousness. But it's never going to be there in any matter. It's impossible. So consciousness cannot come from matter. That's what Vedanta says. So these are the two misperceptions that take place due to faulty discernment, faulty judgment. We project sentience and permanence on the inert and impermanent world of Maya, which is called kshetra in this chapter, with all of its modifications. And we project inertness, finitude, and modification on the sentient, eternal, and undivided consciousness. So we've got everything mixed up. This is our problem. And it is only in this sense that any kind of unison or association has taken place. Union or association. It's not an actual interaction of any kind. It's just through misperception. It's happening in our head, not in reality. So a popular analogy for this is that of a movie screen. Of course, this is not from the Vedas. They didn't have movie screens back then, but it's a modern analogy that helps most of us. We have all this light and shadows coming out of the projector, and it's being projected onto the movie screen. But the movie screen is not moving, right? It's not moving, it's stationary, and it doesn't have anything on it. It's just this white screen. But when we project all those images on it, we get this feeling that somebody's running across the screen. The screen is on fire. Somebody was born. Somebody died. There was sorrow. There was joy. It's all happening on this screen. And we identify with that and we react. People cry. In Tamil Nadu, there's a famous actor named MGR. I mean, he's gone. But if you, in the MGR movie, if he gets shot, the people would get so upset. I'm told that they would burn down the theater. So that how much identification comes just through one movie. So all these things are being projected onto the screen, but the screen remains entirely unaffected. It doesn't move. It's fixed on the wall. It can't move. In reality, the moviegoers have a choice. But they're choosing to identify with the images, not the screen. If they focus their vision on the changing images superimposed on the screen, they will experience all those emotions. Or, it's a waste of $12, $15, I guess, but you go to the theater and you look at the screen and nothing will affect you. You just focus on that one point, say, this is the screen, this is the screen. You can be in there and not be affected, not cry, not get elated, and then again sad, up and down, like the emotional roller coaster of our everyday experience. So we also, in real life, we have that freedom to choose. We can choose to see the reflection or the shadow of Brahman, which is Maya, this world, which creates a lot of sorrow and frustration. Or we can choose to see the cosmic screen of Brahman. Maya is just a reflection, it's just a shadow. So when we identify with Maya, it's double your sorrow. No, you can say, we have a guarantee. If you identify with Maya, you have dissatisfaction guaranteed, or double your Maya back. But if you look at if you see the consciousness, the original light, the original illuminator, not the reflection, if you focus on that, then you're guaranteed to be happy and free from any pain and suffering. That is the benefit of this knowledge. So in this verse, Krishna is leading us to the understanding of how such knowledge liberates us by removing that ignorance. And that ignorance is also the cause of our bondage. We talk about bondage, we're bonded, we're in bondage to our mind, to our vasanas, and all these things. We feel like it. The objects in the world are pulling me this way and that way. But this knowledge can free us from that bondage. That is what Vedanta says. Now we have to experience it. So as long as we don't know that we are this consciousness, even though it is unmanifest and we can't see it or perceive it with any of our senses, we will automatically, so that if we don't have that knowledge, we will automatically identify with the body and the mind, because that's the only thing that we know. Right? We can see the body. We know the mind because we're living in it, unfortunately, all the time. In the world around us, we can see that. So if we don't make the effort to identify with the consciousness, by default, we're going to identify with the body and all the other stuff that's making us suffer. But what about Amma? What does she identify with? She knows, I am the Atman, I am the knower of the field. I am the Kshatrajna, the one who illuminates this entire world as the consciousness. I'm the witness of the entire universe. Mahapralaya Sakshinye Namaha. Remember? I bow down to her who is the witness of the great dissolution of the entire universe. Try to swallow that one. It's a very deep concept. She's a witness even to her own body. So you may have read in her biography that when some people tried to kill her early on because they thought she was bringing shame and some problems to the family because she didn't want to get married and she was always singing to Lord Krishna and just living a blissful life of a realized being, they didn't like that, so they threatened to kill her. And she says, go ahead, you can kill me, but if you stab this body, I will also be watching the body being stabbed. So it doesn't affect me. Can we say that when someone comes at us with a big knife, right? So this is real knowledge, right understanding. And that is why Amma says that she has no birthday. And if she has no birthday, she also has no death day either. Birth, childhood, youth, old age, all these things are they belong to Maya, not to consciousness, not to the Kshatrajna. Samsara belongs to the world, this is what Amma can say, samsara belongs to the world, not to me. We can say that, but it's not true because we still suffer. If we really believe that we are not trapped in samsara, we should never have any sorrow. No anger, no jealousy, none of these emotions, no fear. So just we need a reality check when we think we may have reached the goal. So therefore Krishna says all samsara, all this birth, death, rebirth, etc., is due to the so-called union of mixing, which is mixing up matter and consciousness. Consciousness is our true being. Matter is a temporary equipment that we use. So in truth, there's no union, that's the point, but we misperceive it to be so. And once we mix up the matter and consciousness, it's all downhill from there. I become the experiencer and I start to accumulate karma. So I become the doer, and then the doer is the experiencer of the karma, and it's just a never-ending loop. And the problem is, while we exhaust our karma, typically, this is the pattern in samsara, in this world, is that we accumulate more karmas in the process, and we accumulate more vasanas in the process. because we're running after a phantom. And the more you run, the more you struggle, and the more disappointed you get, and the more desires you create in the process. So it's just a snowball effect that goes nowhere. One thing it does guarantee is another birth. And that may not be as a human being. We could be maybe one in a billion people may be born as a celestial being, a deva, going upwards to some degree, even though we don't want to go to heaven, according to Vedanta. The other possibilities, if it's not a human being, it could be an animal, a dog, a worm, mosquito, the one that everybody's trying to slap and squish. That could be us in the next lifetime. So it all depends on our attitude and how we live this life. So this is what Krishna is talking about in this verse. He's saying that due to the union of yoga, or union of kshatra and kshatrajna, maya and consciousness, rebirth takes place. He says birth takes place, but it's never the first birth, it's just rebirth. Whatever being is born, sentient or insentient, everything is included. And in this sense, verse 22 of the same chapter carries a similar meaning. Attachment to the gunas, to the properties, to the qualities of this world and the experiences, it is attachment to this that is the cause of birth and good and bad wombs. In other words, our attachment to all these experiences is what makes us come back over and over again, sometimes for a pleasant experience, sometimes for an unpleasant experience. There, in that 22nd verse, he uses the words Purusha and Prakriti to delineate the two. The only difference is that here he's saying Kshatra and Kshatrajna. It's the jargon that's changing, not the concept. The very same concept alone. So we have to understand that the confusion comes from our ignorance. This is why that word ajnana, ignorance, comes up over and over again, because that is our root problem. And you heard that analogy of seeing a snake in a rope because it's dusk and you can't see clearly, and it's just a rope, but you think it's a snake, and so you become afraid. So that fear is real, but the snake is not real. That's because it's due to our ignorance. So that is the root problem, lack of knowledge or our ignorance. And so the root problem is lack of knowledge or ignorance. Then that creates a disease, which is mixing up the matter and spirit, or matter and consciousness. And the symptoms of that disease are samsara. So if we want to stop the symptoms, we have to stop confusing the matter with consciousness, the body with the knower of the body. But in order to do that, we have to remove our ignorance. So another way of putting it is that ignorance is the grandfather, and confusing matter and consciousness is the father, and the son, or where we are right now, or the daughter, is samsara. So you cannot eliminate samsara in one step. It takes 3 steps. So that's why ignorance itself is the focus, because that's the ultimate foe we need to defeat. And he's going to continue this in verse 28. Let's read that together. Samam sarveshu bhuteshu tishtantam parameshwaram I'm going to go very slowly on this next one because it's difficult. We're going to have to pronounce that whole first half of the second line together. Vinashyatva vinashyantam. Ya pashyati sapashyati. One truly sees who sees the Supreme Lord or Parameshwara, existing equally in all beings, sentient and insentient. So one truly sees who sees the Parameshwara, existing equally in all beings, sentient and insentient. So here Krishna says that only a realized being has the correct vision of this world. In other words, Amma. In our life, Amma is the only one who sees the world properly. Jnanadev has a beautiful commentary here. He says, though there be numerous and different particles of fire, the heat in them all is the same. Though the rain showers are spread all over the sky, the water in them all is the same. Similarly, although abiding separately in different forms of beings, the Atman, the Self, is only one and the same. Though the groups of beings are different in form and color, the Paramatma abiding in them is one and the same. And the way space appears different in different pots and is yet the Paramatman abiding in them is one and the same, in the way space appears different in different pots and is yet one and the same. So Shankaracharya often calls this vision Samyak Darshanam, which means seeing a thing as it is. We unrealized beings claim to see. I can see, yeah, I can see him over there. But actually we are confusing things, because when I say, oh, there's Fred, then I'm talking about his body and the consciousness in it. I'm mixing up the two. When I say there's Fred, I can see Fred. So we are already just talking to somebody or mentioning somebody's name. We're already confusing matter and consciousness. We're seeing something, but we're not seeing it correctly because we're not seeing what is actually there. A temporary experience of Maya through that equipment. But it's the consciousness that is illuminating everything. The consciousness is sentient, the body is not. The body is inert. We're not seeing that discrepancy there. So erroneous sight is as good as no sight at all. I mean, doesn't mean we should wear a blindfold. It means that it's not real sight. It's mistaken sight. And through that mistaken, erroneous sight, we every day we're reinforcing our wrong understanding of the world. That's another problem. So we spiritually ignorant people cannot be called seers, even when our eyes are wide open. We're blind, so to speak. Again, in the Dhammapada, there's a beautiful passage. Buddha says, see the false as false, the true as true. See what is. See what is not. Follow the true way. Rise. So simple, right? But it sounds like something Amma would say. No, you don't need complicated language. You just say it as it is. But what does the knower see? That's the important thing. The knower sees the Parameshwara, the Supreme Being, which is the same as the Atman, but from the totality. From the standpoint of the totality, we call it Parameshwara, Paramatman. And from the individual level, like how we identify with it, we call it the Atman or Jivatman. And he says that that divine presence is existing equally in all beings, sentient and insentient, Now we know why Amma is so gentle and so loving about everything. She touches the microphone at the end. I don't even do that. I forget to do that myself. She touches the microphone when she's done using it. She won't walk in front of a car because she feels that the car has some kind of sentience or some kind of consciousness, and she doesn't want, it's rude. It happened actually. Her seat was like in the far back of the car. Instead of going the shortcut, she went all the way around the back of the car, and the driver said, why don't you just go in front? He was kind of baffled. Amma said, no, it's not polite to the car. The car has some degree of consciousness or being, whatever it was. She felt it was an affront to the car, so she went around the back. So definitely she sees that divinity in all objects, whether they seem to have any sentience or not. And when she rings the handbells, when she puts them down, she holds them to her heart and then puts them down. Do they have any sentience? We would say no. But they have something special that she recognizes. So, when we talk about the Parameshwara, though, there's no discrepancy about what that means. It means, in the other terminology of this chapter, it is the Kshatrajna, it is the Purusha, Paramatman, etc. So, even in in verse 23 of this chapter, he called it Parameshwara. He said the supreme Purusha in this body is also called the witness, the pimitter, the supporter, the one who experiences, and Parameshwara itself. In the third verse of this chapter also, Krishna said, and know me as the Kshatrajna, the knower, in all bodies, in all kshetras. So that's almost the definition of the Paramatman. So the point is that God, as that consciousness principle, is present equally in all bodies, no matter what they are. And that is what we call the Kshatrajna, the one who illuminates this field for us, which is none other than consciousness. Equally means that it is there in the same nature uniformly without any differences. Because for consciousness, there is no difference. There's no male consciousness, female consciousness, rich consciousness, poor consciousness, old, young. None of these differences are relevant for consciousness. So in that sense, it is always equal. Talk about equal rights, consciousness is nothing but equality. But the problem with us is that we don't identify with that consciousness, and as soon as you identify with this body and all its differences, then we have all the disharmony and discrepancies in the world and the disagreements. That all comes from our identifying with the kshetram instead of the illuminator of the body. But like we said, in Amma's case, she sees only the knower, only the consciousness, not the body. The body is just an incidental shape and name that each person has. Even her own body, she will see it that way. And because she doesn't see us as this body, that is precisely why she is able to see all of us, her darling, mediocre children. She can see all of us as the most adorable thing in the universe. She might say, oh, the kshatram, Maya, it's the shadow of Brahman. It's a temporary reflection of consciousness. It can never be as beautiful as my darling children. Because in us, she sees the potential for identifying with that consciousness. That's the only difference. Because she is guiding us. So, oh, my darling children. And she sees everybody in the whole world as darling children. But she's not referring to the body. She's referring to that reflection of consciousness, which in her mind is already God. Because she knows that we are that. We are the ones that don't know it. So she's referring to that consciousness in us, which is the, Omkara Divya Purali, that song, she says, grow to become adorable and merge in the divine Om. And there are some passages in the Gnostic Gospels that are somewhat relevant here. They kind of explain the same concepts. I want to share those with you too. This offspring will receive the body appointed for it, and it will become perfect. They're talking about people taking a birth, because the Gnostics, there are a lot of indications that they also believed in reincarnation. It has a generous nature since the Son of God dwells in it. So Son of God, we can think of that as the Chitabhasa, because consciousness is God, or it is the Parameshwara, and the reflection of that, we could call it the Son of God, or the daughter of God. So because it has that reflection of conscious in it, it's going to have a generous nature, they say. And also, there's another quote, you who live together with the Son of God, in other words, the reflection of God within you, you love not the world, but the Lord. Right? So we don't, that's what Amma's teaching us how to do, to love God, not Maya. Right now it's the other way around, or we're kind of like, it's a tug of war. Who's going to win? Maya's going to win, or God is going to win over our heart? You know, it's like you have two suitors. They're serenading us at the same time. So we have to make sure we choose God and not Maya. So we talk about samsara. The person who is stuck in samsara, we call them a samsari. And a samsari is one who is absorbed in Maya and misses the consciousness. He's absorbed in kshetra, matter, and misses the consciousness, which is the kshetrajna. But the one who is absorbed in consciousness, in the kshetrajna, does not even look at the kshetra, the matter. That person is a wise person, the only person who actually sees properly in this world. So now, if Amma doesn't see the matter in this world, then why does she do all these humanitarian activities? Not for the sake of matter, not for the sake of money or anything like that. She's doing it because only to alleviate the suffering of people. So the consciousness is temporarily confused by identifying with the matter of this body and mind, etc. So to help us get out of that predicament, which is samsara itself, she's trying to relieve everybody's suffering. So physical suffering comes first, because until you can rectify that, people cannot talk about or think about spirituality. So that's where it comes from. And it also comes from the fact that she's an embodiment of compassion, which is the innate nature of a realized being. But it's not because that she doesn't see the consciousness, she doesn't see the matter in the world. She sees it as a means to help people, that's all. She doesn't focus on that. So another point that we can understand from here, another analogy that helps us to understand, is that of water or the ocean and waves. When the waves are rising, our vision can be either on the wave, the shape that it's taking, and that's the changing shape that eventually crashes and disappears, or we can be looking at the water. And if we look at the water only, then we just, no matter which wave it is, that's all the same. Whether it's beginning to create a wave, and whether it's peaking or crashing, it's all just water. So the changes don't affect us at all. But in reality, if you look at our lives now, it's like we're looking at the waves one by one. Oh, this wave is a nice wave. Oh, this wave is a rich wave. This is a poor wave. That's a nice, I like that wave. I don't like this wave. You know, we label everything with so many different designations, not realizing that everything is the same essence. In the analogy, the essence is water. In our studies here in the Gita, in this chapter, that essence is consciousness, the Kshatrajna, Parameshwara, Atman, whatever you want to call it. And actually, it's a really good meditation, I feel, to watch the waves on the beach. If you have a beach nearby you, you can sit there and just look at the waves and try to see the water and not the waves. It's not easy, because as the wave is changing shape, it's just like a human being. You have the birth, and then you have infancy, then you have youth, then you have aging, you have disease, and then there's ultimately the death of the wave. So all these 6 modifications that we have in our life are there in the wave. So if you can look at that wave and see only water and not the wave, it's a really good sadhana. And I have a link that should be soon posted to the chat window for this video. In case you haven't seen it, it'll be there. You can click on that and watch those waves on YouTube and meditate on that. It's a eyes open meditation. So if we tell Amma, oh, so-and-so has gone, she will share in our sorrow and our tears, but she's being a knower of the reality. She can easily say, who is born, who is gone? Nobody was born and nobody left. It's just the consciousness. You called that person Fred, and so you're saying Fred's gone, but Fred is just one name of billions of names that he's been known by, or then he doesn't even have a gender, he doesn't have a body. It was a temporary experience. And if we can adopt that same knowledge or achieve that same knowledge, it is so liberating. We'll never have any sorrows ever again. Now we need to understand a little bit more about the methodology. He's going to give more explanation in verse 29. Samam pashyan hi sarvatra samavastitam Ishwaram. This is similar. It's a little long. We have to chant it all together. Na hinastyatmanatmanam tato yati param gatim. Just a few changes here. Seeing the Lord equally present everywhere, he injures not the self by the self, and so attains to the supreme state, or we could call it goal. So another nice quote from Jnanadev here, and as you know, if you're a regular attendee, he loves graphic references. So here's his version of this. This body is obviously a scorpion with 5 stinging tails, which is the 5 senses, or 5 fires enveloping from 5 sides, the panchabhutas, the 5 elements, or the shelter in the form of a deer discovered by a lion. In other words, you're done for when you identify with the body, that's what he's saying. But one possessed of knowledge, while dwelling in such a body, never permits the destruction of his own soul, and at the end of his worldly career, he merges into that Atman. After crossing over millions of births, the yogis, through their sadhana, take a plunge into the unfathomable. Think about that. What is the plunge into the unfathomable? From where there is no returning, as they claim. It means in the Vedas, the Upanishads, it says there's no returning. Once you merge with the Atman, there's no coming back. That principle, which is beyond the universe of beings having names and forms. As light is one and the same, even in millions of lamps, the Supreme God abides everywhere. One who experiences such evenness while alive is not fettered by future births and deaths. And therefore, I extol again and again the unique fortune of such a one, since their vision is ever fixed on evenness. So not only do you see consciousness everywhere, you see all beings as being equal. Even those who treat us poorly, people who praise us, it's all equal. I'm just going to rewind for 1 second. That state from which there is no returning, that is very important to remember, because some people get confused about it. You know, somebody came to me and said, so-and-so told me that in your past life you were God realized, but in this life you forgot that you were God realized. So that's why you're with Amma, to get God realized again. I don't know where they got that idea, but it's really just a bunch of malarkey, pardon my language. It doesn't make any sense. It is not at all in congruence with the scriptures or any of Amma's teachings. There is no coming back from God realization. If you do come back, you're still God realized, and you've come back because you made a sankalpa to help the world or something of that nature. So God realization is the end. It's the terminus of the train, and you never get back on the train again. Don't worry. In the previous verse, we saw how realized beings see other people. But how do they see themselves? The answer is that they see themselves with the same exact vision that they see the world. They see themselves as the illuminator of the entire world, and they have no claims about being connected with the inert matter in this world. So when Amma's doing darshan, if the body has a problem, it's the body's problem, right? You may see her shift her, posture or something like that. It's just like, you have your dog on your lap, and then you're just moving the dog around on your lap, and, or you have a car and you're changing a tire on your car. That's, for her, that's all it is. It's a foreign object. But she uses it because how can she be with her darling children without this body, right? Her mission is to take us to the goal. So she needs the body for that, but she doesn't identify with it. And actually, it's not that they see the world as, as the Atman, and then they see themselves as the Atman. It's the other way around. The first thing that they realize is that they are the Atman. They are the Parameshwara, or the Paramatman. And then, having seen that, they see that, oh, everybody else is also the same consciousness. Everybody else is also the Atman. We're all the same. So the first realization is that of one's own divinity, one's own existence as the Atman. Only after that do we see that in others. Because as the rule goes, when you know yourself, you know all other beings. That's the rule. So the same thing works in reverse, though. If you misunderstand who you are, you're going to misunderstand who everybody is. If you know yourself as the matter, this body, you're going to see everybody as just a body that you can get something from. And that's how we objectify happiness in the world. When I was in college, I learned about this concept that I'd never thought of before, which was objectification of women. And we learned about it. It was one of the early classes I took in college, and it really opened my eyes to this concept of, wow, objectifying a human being for different things that we want, that's definitely not a healthy habit. But after studying spirituality and being with Amma, I realized it's not just objectification of women, it's objectification of happiness. We project happiness on cars, houses, all these things. It doesn't stop with women or men. Every single thing in this world, we project happiness on it, and we're objectifying our happiness without understanding that it's only subjective. Ultimately, what we want is the subjective experience of happiness. So If we think that we are this matter, this body, we're going to treat everybody else as a thing, as an object. Even happiness, we think it's like an object. Wasn't there some commercial like that, Happiness Inside or something like that? It's just crazy the way the marketing world tries to objectify happiness. So when we look at ourselves as being this body, matter, then we're going to be afraid our whole life. If we don't understand death, we're just afraid of the dark and all these other things. But once we understand death, then death haunts us always, every single day. I'm one day closer to death. And if I'm attached to the body, if I identified with the body, it's not just attachment, it's identification with the body. Then I have worries about my health, about my finances, all kinds of attachments, sorrows, suffering. And then when I get what I want, then I'm afraid I'm going to lose it. Everything has to do with identifying with this body. Every problem we have. And that means we're identifying with matter rather than spirit. The kshetra instead of the kshetrajna. Even though the choice is there, lying in our hands, we still choose which is seemingly easiest, which is manifest and can be perceived by our senses, which is matter. So how do we really make this what I am, how do we become immortal? Or we could say, how do we avoid being mortal? How to make that mantra, Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya, how to make that a reality? We should know that no one, not even Amma, can make anything in Maya immortal. Why? Because by definition, Maya is not immortal. We know that if nothing else, it's going to be gone at the time of the dissolution of the universe, the pralaya. That's just the law of the universe, and Amma has no interest in changing it, of course. She created that law herself. So, the only way to become immortal is by recognizing myself to be the kshetrajna, to recognize myself as the consciousness, and so on. It doesn't matter the terminology, you get the idea. We have to discard our identification with the body and all the matter that we identify with now. There's no other way. That's why Krishna said in chapter 2, verse 24, this Atma is uncleavable, incombustible, and cannot be wetted or dried. It is eternal, all-pervading, stable, immovable, and everlasting. This is the only way to become immortal, is to identify with the Atma and realize it as ourself. So whether we are mortal or not doesn't depend on God or Amma. It's all in our hands. There's nobody else that can do it for us. So there's actually no question of making something mortal or immortal. Either it's mortal or it's immortal from the beginning, and it never changes. The Maya will always be mortal, and consciousness will always be immortal. There's nothing else. End of conversation. So it's a question of which one we identify with. When we say we attain knowledge, it means the knowledge that I am immortal, knowledge that I am consciousness. And interestingly, that is why the Upanishads say that the one who perpetuates ignorance is effectively killing himself or herself. Every ignorant person, their life ends in a suicide of sorts. It really says that. But the contrary is also true. If you attain realization, you don't kill yourself. What does that mean? It means you have the opportunity to become immortal by identifying with the self, the true self. But if you choose not to, if you choose to identify with the kshetra, with Maya, you have killed yourself, basically. It's just a matter of time, and then you're going to leave the body and the body you identified with died. So you effectively died. Not really, but just, as far as your experience was. So by attaining knowledge, we are avoiding harming ourselves or killing ourselves. That's the essence of this verse, basically. The first line defines who the jnani is, who the knower is, which is someone who sees the same consciousness everywhere. Because he sees the kshatrajna, which is evident in all beings, only as a reflection. He's not actually, he's not regarding the reflection as consciousness, but he knows that the consciousness is the source of the reflection. So he's seeing that, not the reflection. Not only that, he sees it uniformly in all beings. He sees it in the same way, or she sees it in the same way. There's no superiority or inferiority. That's why Amma can hug the prime minister with the same love as she hugs a leper, right? Or us, average people. She doesn't care about their race, their religion, their creed, or any of their attributes. In fact, the people who suffer more, she, out of compassion, she gives them, seemingly gives them more love. There's no more or less love with her, but she showers them with her compassion to relieve their suffering. So this, he does not harm himself by himself or kill himself by himself. It's a figurative expression. It means he doesn't mortalize himself through identifying with the body. So even when such a person is on their deathbed and about to die, maybe everybody around them will be crying, but they won't be crying because they understand that this family of mine is a temporary union of sorts. Not really union, but we happened to come together this time, and they knew the whole time that they were going to have to separate from them also because they're a knower. They know that they're not this body. That's a temporary, convenience, that's all. So though others may cry, they will never cry. And because they remember teachings like this from the Gita, verse 27 of chapter 2. Death is certain of that which is born, birth is certain of that which is dead. So he knows that he or she has already gotten off the merry-go-round. They don't have any attachment to that, but they know that if the body, takes birth, if you come into a body and you identify with that, then you're going to have to take another birth. So if they're a knower, they won't come back. They merge in the Atman. So for them, there's no rebirth. So then what happens, as the verse says, he attains to the supreme state or goal, which is that of merging in the Atman. So we can interpret that to mean Jivan Mukti or Videha Mukti, either one. Either you're realized while you're alive or you realize when you leave the body. It doesn't matter. It's a difference of time, which is illusion anyhow. So the highest goal is attainment of Brahman. That's what it means. And we're going to go on to verse 30. Be the last one for today. Prakrityaiva cha Prakrityaiva cha Karmani Kriyamanani Sarvashaha Yah Pashyati Tatatmanam Akartaram Sapashyati. He alone sees, who sees that all actions are done exclusively by Prakriti, and thus the self is not the doer. I took some liberties here. He alone sees, who sees that all actions are done exclusively by Prakriti, which means Maya, and thus the self is not the doer. So, another nice bit of commentary by Jnanadev. He says, "It is the occupants of a house that move about in the house, and the house itself does nothing. So too, the clouds run about in the sky, while the sky itself remains inactive. In that way, Prakriti, which means Kshetra, it means Anatma, it means Maya, it means this whole world. In that way, Prakriti, enlivened by the Atma, the self, and with the help of the gunas, the qualities, plays all these games. The Atma remaining firm like a pillar, in no way knowing the games played by Prakriti. In other words, completely aloof. It's a figurative expression. One in whom there has arisen the light of knowledge of these decisions has truly perceived the theory of the soul being the non-agent." So we've addressed this analogy in other ways with other different analogies, like the sun illuminating all the activities on the earth but not partaking in them. So it's like that kind of a analogy. But the real purpose of this verse is to talk about the benefit or the fruits of this knowledge. So in the previous verse, it was said that he looks upon himself as essentially immortal, or he understands, he knows that he or she is immortal. And then in this verse, Krishna says that the jnani looks upon himself as being free from all actions. So in the previous verse, he is free from death. Here, he's free from action. These ideas have already come in the Gita. It's not a new idea. You can refer to chapter 5, verses 8 and 9, where he said, "The sage centered in the self should think." Should doesn't really mean should. It means if they are a sage, they will think like this. "I do nothing at all. Those seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, going, sleeping, breathing, speaking, evacuating," that means going to the toilet, "holding, opening, and closing the eyes, firm in the thought that the senses move among the sense objects." So the realized being is just watching all this. It's the gunas, the rajas, tamas, and rajas, sattva, and tamas are interacting with each other. I'm just watching. There's a number of verses that convey the same message earlier in the Gita. Chapter 4, verse 18. "One who sees inaction in action, and action in inaction, is wise among people. They are a yogi, an accomplisher of everything." Chapter 3, verse 28. "O mighty armed one, the one intuitive into the nature of gunas and karmas, knows that gunas as senses merely abide with gunas as objects and does not become entangled." It's like the verse two verses ago. It's just all these objects in the world, all the matter, it has different qualities, and like if you mix vinegar and baking soda was it? I forget which one. You're going to have a big explosion. Like that, water and oil don't go together. So all these qualities are there. They're built into Prakriti, and they just see it like, the physical. The sense organs are interacting with those objects based on their nature also. So it's all qualities of Prakriti. It's nothing to do with me. I am the one who's illuminating it and watching. One last verse we can quote is chapter 2, 21. "One who cognizes the Atma as indestructible, eternal, unborn, and changeless, how can he or she slay or cause another to slay?" They cannot do anything if they realize that the Atman is all-pervasive, unborn and changeless. It doesn't do anything. If you know the sun is the sun that we know, it's obvious to you that it's not doing anything here on earth. This is a different realm of activity. So that's the analogy. The Parameshwaran or the Paramatma does not actually do anything. It is just the nature of Prakriti interacting with itself. Only difference between these verses and the one that we're getting in this chapter is that the nomenclature has changed. So it was called Deha Dehi earlier. That's now because has become Kshatrajna and Kshatra. Dehi means the indweller of the body. That is also known as the Kshatrajna, the knower, the Purusha, and so on. All these names for the self. And Deha means body. We can call it Kshetram, we can call it Prakriti, we can call it Maya, whatever we want. We have to remember that all these terms mean the same thing because they are interchangeable in the scriptures. So as part of Prakriti, this body is always doing something. We cannot stop it from doing anything. In fact, Arjuna was saying, I'm just going to throw away everything and do nothing. And Krishna's response was like, you can't do nothing. It's impossible. In this world, you'll always be doing something. And even if you try to sit and do nothing, your vasanas are going to push you into doing something. So that is the reality of Prakriti. It's always restless. We have hunger that makes us do something, or the mind may be restless and make us do something. Even if we are sitting still, meditating or trying to meditate, the blood is circulating, cells are changing, we're growing older, food is getting digested, all the 5 elements are moving around inside of our body. The pranas, the 5 pranas are moving around inside our body on a subtle level. And you can't still the mind completely. So that's why Amma has all these steps that she has to make us focus on, visualize this, visualize that, because she knows the mind cannot stay put in one place for very long. So all of these things are part of Prakriti and they never stop moving. And not only the Prakriti that I experience, but everybody, there's so many, there's only one consciousness, but the Kshetra, the bodies are infinite, virtually. And each person has their reflection of that consciousness that they're experiencing. And so then we interact with the other, jivas, the beings, sentient beings. And then all these interactions create even more activity, sometimes pleasant, sometimes unpleasant. So, but it is the knower, the illuminator, that doesn't do anything. That illuminator simply illuminates. And it's not an action, it's their inborn nature. Like the sun. The sun is not doing anything, it's just sitting there. But its nature is to be self-luminous. So it's not really a doing, it's a being. So if your being was illumination, you can't call that an action. So that's what consciousness is. Its nature is illumination of everything. So, and it is witnessing everything that happens around us. So now, Krishna effectively is laying a question, an option in front of us. He's saying, you have a choice. I'm explaining all this to you, and there's going to be more explanation, but we have to remember that it's a proposal. Which one do you want to identify with? You want to identify with the kshetra, with the body, with Maya, that's okay. That's your choice. These are the consequences. Just know that. Make an educated decision. Because you can also choose to identify with the knower, with the illuminator, with the self. And then there's no action, there's no karmic repercussions. And if there's no karmic repercussions, there's no karma that comes back to bite us. Later, maybe 10 births later, who knows? You must have heard, if you're watching the live streams, there was that a story about how somebody, forget which figure it was, but they had to be reborn 50 times. Oh, it was Dhritarashtra. Yeah, because he had 100 sons and he lost them all, and he was wondering why. Basically, the short version is that he had that karma to lose 100 sons, and also, he had to do it as a king. So he took 50 births to accumulate the good karma to become a king, have 100 sons, and then he had to lose them all. So this is the kind of karmic retribution that we will avoid if we can identify with who we really are. He says all the karmas, all the actions are done by Prakriti. If you identify with Prakriti, then you are owning those, and you have to deal with the repercussions. Or you can say, no, I'm not doing anything, and you have to actually, that has to be your experience. Just saying it is not enough. You can write it on the blackboard 1,000 times, but if it's not your experience, if you think, I'm doing this, that's all that we need to incur karma. And this is always, he's saying there's no exception to the rule. He sees, no matter what, this is the knower of the self, no matter what the circumstance is, even if it's like the greatest thing and everybody's attributing it to you or he, or we said Amma, the realized being, they will never say, yes, I did it. I mean, it may be like Amma may say, Amma's trying to get these guys to serve the poor people. She doesn't mean, the body. She's not, maybe the body is doing something, but she doesn't mean the real her, the consciousness. She's just saying that, it's the Prakriti is doing it, and Amma herself is identified with the consciousness. So Krishna says that such a vision is the proper way to see things, and such a person alone is free from confusion. The rest of people in the world are all confused, including all of us. And there's an interesting word for that confusion. It's called bhranti. Bhranti just means confusion. And you may have heard that story that I told in Amrita Puri. That was almost a year ago. I'll mention it just so that we can end with a humorous note. When I first met Amma, I didn't have any spiritual name. And my birth name at that time was Brandon. And now in America, when we say Brandon, we say Brandon, right? And but when you pronounce it, with an Indian accent, it becomes like Brandon. And so, somehow the topic of my name came up, and the Swamis were telling Amma, his name is Brandon. And that's very close to a Malayalam word, which is Brantan. And Brantan means crazy man, right? So Amma was saying, oh, you're Brantan and I'm Branti. The only thing that when she said that, I thought I would like to change my craziness for hers, because hers is divine craziness, whereas mine is, you know what I mean. So, but the one commentator jokingly says, Branti, that word Branti, maybe that is the etymological origin of the Western name brandy. Because you're drunk with delusion. So everybody thinks that they're sober, but they're drinking brandy, and they're completely drunk, and they don't know what they're doing, and they're not seeing properly. And the only sober person is the knower of the truth, because they don't have any no brandy in them. So we could look at it that way also. And we're going to learn more about this process and the benefit of this knowledge next week. And with the remaining few minutes, I will try to answer the questions that have come. Okay, Namah Shivaya. We have a few questions here. One is, you mentioned that Amma undergoes some tapas if we don't perform our sadhana properly. Like if devotees lack awareness, she may fast, etc. So some days I feel lazy and I don't feel like doing my sadhana. Does that mean Amma will fast because of my laziness? Just the thought of this was like a lightning strike in my heart. Wow, never thought that way. And so the the person is, wondering how to look on this. So, I mean, I'm not trying to make anybody feel guilty, but we all of course, we all make mistakes, and we knowingly or unknowingly do things that we know will, according to the traditional explanation and Amma, her own words, mean that Amma's work is increasing. So the mistakes of the disciple and the devotees, we can think of them as, the Guru compensates for our shortcomings. Because as the Guru, Amma has taken, that she has made the resolve that she is going to take our karma upon her. And it is also said that, the disciple or the devotee only experiences 10% of their karma because the Guru has taken the other 90%. But we have to experience something. So that itself is an amazing concept, that Amma is taking that much of our karma, but at least we can avoid creating more karma or adding more burden to her, to what she's already taking from us. That's, I think, probably a healthy way of looking at it. We try to do our sadhana as much as possible, try to be a good person, try to help others, try not to get angry and, all the negativities. And that way we are reducing Amma's burden. If you ask Amma, she'll say, what burden? There's no burden for me. But which is true when she identifies with the consciousness. But at least for the sake of her body, we could maybe be thoughtful and compassionate towards our Guru, so that we try to be very dedicated, and so that we don't have to worry about, am I creating more trouble for Amma? So there was another question that came up a while back, and I'm pretty sure I responded to it, but the person who asked the question seems to not have heard the answer. So even if I did talk about it, there's no harm in responding again for the sake of that person. And I think the question was something like this. Conception takes place when a sperm and egg join, creating a zygote. But when does the soul enter that zygote, that fetus? Now, this is a very subtle question, and it is laden with potential moral and even political ramifications, which I really would like to avoid discussing. Because it all depends on your beliefs and your affiliations and so on. And Amma doesn't talk about it either, especially not these days. Possibly for those reasons, I don't know. But I mean, I'm not 100% sure, but I have a recollection of Amma once talking about this, and something to the equivalent that the soul enters the womb sometime during the pregnancy. And the person who asked this question, their confusion was, if the seed has consciousness and the egg has consciousness, then which consciousness becomes the soul? So it's not like that. I'm pretty sure from what I know of what Amma has said is that it's not like there's two consciousnesses that come together in the womb. It is that the soul enters the womb somewhere during the pregnancy. That's what it is. So that means that the seed and the egg do not have separate souls, so we don't have to worry about that. That would really pose a very complicated conundrum if they did. So we don't have to worry about that. And there was another question from the same person in the same time regarding the soul versus consciousness. And they wanted to know, are they the same thing or are they different? So my response would be that we have to be very careful. This is the prologue. We have to be very careful when we mix English terminology in the context of a spiritual tradition that has its roots in another language. It's a very precarious undertaking. In the case of Sanatana Dharma, that language is Sanskrit originally. And the meaning of the words is pretty clear. So the words that are being used for soul and so on, soul and consciousness. Whereas in modern English, unfortunately, that word soul can be construed in many ways, depending on your religious background, your education, and so many other factors. You're going to have some conditioning that will make that word soul mean something to you. So I feel it's best to avoid that word soul entirely, just to avoid any misunderstandings or wrong notions. It's easier to use the original Sanatana Dharma language, which we could say Jiva is the individual, and Jivatma is the soul of the individual. It's quite straightforward. And consciousness is Chaitanyam, so we don't have to worry about that. It's definitely, it may be the same thing as the self, but we can refer to them separately without any confusion. And so Jiva is the living being, and Jivatma is the consciousness that is reflected in that living being. And it may be very faint. This person was saying, does a plant have a soul or whatever? And I'm saying, it's the consciousness. If you're asking about consciousness, it has consciousness. Amma has said that. It may be faint, but it still has consciousness. So it is sentient. The plants are sentient. Trees, all these amoebas, there must be some kind of sentience there, however feeble it may be. But when we look at the degree of sentience in a being, that is more of a discussion about Chittabhasa. Because if we compare to a very tiny plant, we would say that human beings have more sentience, but that's only compared to us. But if we compare us then with Amma, then we would say Amma's sentience is infinitely greater than ours. She says that Chittabhasa in the subtle body can manifest, infinite light or very little light, even in a human body. So we would have to say that Amma's sentience, is greater, much greater than ours. So it's all relative, but it's not a question of having a soul or not. In my mind, that's my feeling. Okay, we'll go on to the next question, if I can get the cooperation of my laptop. So the next question was about karma. The person says, last Saturday, Amma was saying, for example, to make a long story short, a group of people get killed by a terrorist bomb. It was their karma. But for the terrorist, doesn't he get bad karma also? Likewise, if a husband is violent with his wife and children, isn't violence adharmic? And wouldn't that person get more karma? Should we accept violence to burn our karma or to speak out for unrighteousness, etc.? This is the basic theory. So I will share, because we're running out of time, we're already out of time. I'm going to try to, just going to read what I had pre-prepared to make it faster. First of all, Amma's point was not that people who are killed by terrorists deserved it. That specific example is one she uses as an example of how the law of karma works when many people have similar karma that fructifies, is the word they use in the old translations. It means that all bear fruit at the same time. So if you have all these people bearing fruit, some kind of karmic fruit at the same time, then there will be a massive event where a lot of people are affected because they all need that same experience to purge their karma. Then an event like 9/11 or something takes place, and that karma becomes eliminated. But at the same time, it goes without saying that killing innocent people is an action that will bring about a tremendous karmic burden for all who are involved in that. That's a different point. But Amma's point was something else. She was looking at it like from the karma coming from a past life. How does it get eliminated? That's all. She wasn't saying that you should allow it or all that. It was an observation. The important point is that Amma is giving us examples to understand why certain things happen as they do, but only after the fact. She's talking about it after the fact, because it's for us to understand why such things happen. It is never ever meant to be used as a justification for doing such things. So without a proper understanding of the law of karma, tragedies like World War II or whatever it is might lead us to believe that God is unfair, or maybe there is no God after all. So others may abuse the concept by saying that they are helping people burn their karma by harming them. And there was a guru in Japan, actually, with the sarin gas attack you may have heard about 1995 in Tokyo. That guru actually was so crazy that he misunderstood the law of karma and said, we're helping these people by purging their karma. And that's why we're going to spray sarin gas in the subway. So, wrong understanding of law of karma is definitely dangerous. But Amma's trying to teach us the proper understanding of it. The fact is that there is a law of karma, and we have to understand it. So we have no right to hurt others without due cause, and at the same time, we cannot stop other people from experiencing their karma. You cannot just out of compassion say, oh, you're not going to have to experience this karma. You're not the Lord of karma. They're going to have to experience it. So we have to accept both sides of the equation. Simultaneously, this is Amma's point, we can do everything possible to alleviate the suffering of others. Suffering cannot be completely eliminated because suffering is the nature of Maya. What we can do is share in others' suffering, like Amma says. Through my children, the world should see that the beauty and fragrance of compassion and selfless service has not disappeared from this earth. This itself will bring the maximum relief to suffering people if we live up to Amma's prayer. The bottom line about karma is whatever sorrow has already happened is karma under the bridge. We talk about water under the bridge, it's karma under the bridge, and we have to just understand why it happened. Whatever suffering I experience now is nobody else's fault, so I pray to Amma for the strength to accept and transcend it. And whatever suffering other people are experiencing now is an opportunity for me to grow and cultivate divine virtues through compassionate service. So acceptance is not regarding the facts, acceptance is regarding the facts in the present moment, right? You're accepting the reality of the moment. Laziness makes us waste the present moment based on conjecture about the future, not the present. So laziness is thinking about the future, oh, it's going to be like that, okay, it's fine, I'm not going to do anything. Acceptance is looking at the present and saying, well, this is the reality of my present moment, I have to accept it. Now I can work to change it, but I have to accept the present. So there should be no confusion between acceptance and laziness. That's the end of the questions for today. Again, I went over the time to answer the questions. Sorry. Otherwise, they pile up. We can have a brief meditation after we chant Asatoma and Lokaha. Om Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi Om Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Those who have a few more minutes to assimilate these teachings of the Gita, Close your eyes, check your posture. Try to keep your back and neck relatively straight. Slow down the breathing, feeling the body and mind relax with each deep inhalation and exhalation. Try to feel Amma's divine presence all around you. And direct your attention within, trying to identify with that consciousness, that awareness, which is Amma's presence within. Breathe as slowly and deeply as you can while maintaining a natural breathing pattern. And as the mind and body relax further and further, remember the previous meditations where we were witnessing the body. Try to return back to that witness state, watching the body. See it as separate from you. You are the witness illuminating the body, its presence, everything it feels. If any restless thoughts arise, instead of reacting, just watch it, witness it. Understand it is part of Maya, and you are illuminating that thought, not identifying with it. Now, as we chant the final peace prayer, try to maintain that witness state. Try to witness the body chanting and try to maintain that feeling as long as you can. Take a deep breath. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnad Purnamatachude Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. One more long deep breath. And as you breathe out, slowly open your eyes. Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you for joining us. And if you didn't already know, this Saturday, the bhajans that we normally would do here, we are requesting or suggesting to everybody, you can all share in one program together, at least from the Midwest and East Coast, watching the East Coast bhajans. And the following week we will do the bhajans here, rotating back and forth. So I will see you all next on the following Thursday for Gita class. Namaskar.